Good afternoon to all our viewers. I am Joe Maalouf, an activist, advocate for freedom of speech and human rights, the founder of Human Dignity Union, a newly established NGO, and a Lebanese TV host. I'm thrilled to be with you from the Maishdia Foundation Media Institute studio in Beirut. Today, we are joined by Dr. Edith Schlaffer, a social scientist and trained psychoanalyst, founder and executive director of Women Without Borders since 2001, with a view to building up the competence and confidence of women to effect positive social change in countries of crisis and transition around the world. She is a leader and a change maker, the first academic to publish a study on domestic violence in Austria. Dr. Schlaffer is Ashoka Fellow, Advisory Council member at Omega Women's Leadership Center in New York, and the recipient of numerous awards, including Reader's Digest, European of the Year 2018, Foreign Policy's 100 Global Thinkers 2016, the Grand Decoration of Honor in Gold for Services to the Republic of Austria for Lifelong Learning 2016, Soroptimist International of Europe Peace Prize 2015, Ayan Burda Award for Creative Leadership 2015, Newsweek 150 Movers and Shakers 2011, and Women's E-News 21 Leaders of the 21st Century 2010. Dr. Schlaffer, welcome and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for this very nice welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. As I previously mentioned, you are the founder and executive director of Women Without Borders. Can you please elaborate about the organization's philosophy and focus areas?
Yes, so Women Without Borders is an NGO based and headquartered in Vienna, but it is more than that. It is a movement because we as women across the world, we have to come together. And our subtitle is Women Without Borders Change the World. I do think that women have the potential, the power to change the world, but we need to acknowledge this power. We have to create networks. We have to go beyond borders. This is our one world, and we need to work together. So many problems we face alone, the whole area of violence, from gender-based violence to violent extremism, is a big challenge for all of us. You know, this is not a particular problem of a particular country anymore. And when I speak about power, that women need to change or must change the world and need to take the power, we as women, as global women community, need to know that we have the power. But power is something that doesn't have a nice aura, because power so often is misused. So we need to do power differently. I think we have to rethink the concept of power and talk about empathy, about human rights, about peace building, reconciliation. These are the puzzle pieces, how we can do power in a way that we all can live together. The big question for all of us today is, how can we live together? How can it work? And we must make it work. And I do think that women play a huge role in the question of how this should take place and how these safe spaces can evolve. And this is one of the big missions, to focus on female leadership, women leadership, to create safe spaces across the world.
Doctor, when you say power is misused, can you elaborate on this, please?
Yes, I mean, if let's see, the personal is political. I think this has been one of the most poignant slogans of the women's movement. And the personal is political. At home, at the home front, in the families, very often women experience abuse, the abuse of power. So those who should be the closest to them, who are the closest to them, and who should cherish them and relate to them in a peaceful way. So we have a huge pandemic going on now. It's the COVID pandemic, but the silent pandemic covering this ongoing crisis is domestic violence, gender-based violence.
Exactly.
This is the unspoken of, the the pandemic is something that defines the lives of so many women across the world. So this is abuse of power, which is experienced at the very personal level. And it goes up, from the personal to the political. At all levels, power is abused. And this is something that is very upsetting and very irritating and really doesn't move our societies into the right direction.
Women Without Borders 2020 Mother Lead campaign. It revolves around stories of bravery and resilience from the global Women Without Borders community. Can you please tell us what is the aim of this project and why now?
Yeah, the Women Lead was a campaign, Mothers Lead actually, and I would highlight now the role of the mothers in the families and the communities. Mothers have unprecedented access. They are in the closest physical but also emotional proximity to their other family members. They have influence in their families, but very often they don't use it in the way they maybe could to make a real change. They don't get the respect because very often they don't understand that they have first asked for the respect for themselves before they can expect that their sons, their daughters, their husbands respect them. So we created, I think one of the key programs we are now spearheading since almost 10 years is the Mothers Parenting for Peace program, the Mother Schools, which is an educational model. I can elaborate about it, where we bring mothers together to understand how they can connect, how they can reach out to their children in situations of crisis, particularly when their children are affected by violence themselves. And we brought the leaders and the alumni of the Mother Schools programs we have been rolling out over the last years together in this campaign, so that in this situation of crisis, during the COVID situation, where we have all been so disconnected, isolated, that women can connect and support each other and share the kind of leadership they are exercising to help each other to understand that they have to lead in their families. And mothers don't only lead in their families, they have multiple identities. Mothers are not just mothers. Creating this networks of mothers means that they are also colleagues, and when they go out into the workspace, when they go into the community, they relate to each other as teachers, as nurses, in all their various identities. And this is so important, so they kind of go there, have influence beyond their families, and creating these networks, which starts with the family and goes into the community. This is a huge wave of change.
To lead in the society too. Women Without Borders majorly focuses on women's role in fighting extremism and gender-based violence. Has your organization tackled these issues through a male approach within the family, and how important do you think involving men in such matters is?
That's an interesting question. First, we have to start with the women themselves. Of course, we believe in whole of society programs and approaches, but we have to do change start step by step. And in these matters, when women need to be sensitized about their roles, how to deal with the delicate question of violence and extremism, it's very important to work on the self-confidence, on the trust of the women, of the mothers themselves. And we learned a lot of trust by doing a study, a research program in, I think, 6 countries across the world, where we connected with concerned mothers who were concerned that their children would go into the wrong direction, that they might be interested in violent extremist ideologies, in terrorist recruitments, that they would follow the lure of recruiters. And we asked these women in a survey of 1,000 people, so it was a 1,000 mother study. We asked them, whom do you trust most? With whom would you like to connect and work? And they said, over 90% of the mothers said, we trust other mothers, other concerned mothers. So trust is the number one way forward. We have to create an atmosphere of trust to work together in this really very sensitive terrain of violence, and even, I mean, it is violent extremism and domestic violence are at opposite ends, but they are connected. We could see that young people who were drawn into violent extremist scenarios were interested very often also came from vulnerable environments. So they did not feel safe. And we encourage now women to talk about these issues, to protect themselves. And if they protect themselves from the violence in their environment, they can also protect their children because they become trusted partners. They need to connect with the young people in their families, in their communities, learn about how to reestablish a relationship that might not be functioning very well. There's this huge myth that when children are teenagers, they don't need their families anymore.
Yes.
We absolutely believe, and we have research evidence that particularly in the volatile years of adolescence, the mothers, the family members are the strongest anchor to protect the children from all kinds of toxic influences. But mothers are on the forefront because they have the presence, they are in the families, and fathers, I think the second layer, they are also very important. They have the authority, but usually not the time invest. Mothers do anything to protect their children. They invest time, they don't clock the hours, they try to connect, they try to be there. But very often they don't have the skills, and very often they don't have the confidence that they are actually, they could be a critical force of change. So we created an educational model, the mother schools, where mothers who are concerned or maybe even affected come together and learn about their own value, learn to connect with each other, create networks, learn about the dynamics in the critical years of adolescence, learn how to talk to their children, how to reconnect, and also bring this message to the fathers so that the fathers are interested and reconnect with their children as well.
You mentioned that you asked 1,000 women based on your statistics, and you found out that 90% of them, women, only trust women. Are you working to change this percentage? Because I think we all agree that we need to build this trust between women and their husbands and men.
Yes, I'm glad you asked me this question because number two is husbands. No, number two actually was... it was women, other mothers, and then it was husbands, of course, and other family members, because usually the family relationships are very valued, are very strong. And on the third place, we have teachers. So the first trusted entity outside of the family are the teachers. So we can see that education plays a huge role. Education within the family and education without the family. Those are the institutions which are most trusted and most effective. That means we need more education. I think the sharpest tool, the weapon we actually have as civil society actors is education, making the bond with the children by talking to them, teaching, advancing their knowledge, building the relationships. And we saw that law enforcement, NGOs, particularly NGOs from foreign countries with unknown influences, are viewed very critically. So there is a lot of fear around these outside actors. And I do think we have to really focus on the immediate environment. And the fathers are critical, of course. They are critical. They have to be brought into the space. But this is also... this is something that takes an extra effort. And we thought, and that was maybe our own bias, that it will be extremely hard to get them into the space. And we realized, as soon as the fathers realized that over time, when the mothers, their wives, visited these regular meetings over months of the mother schools, they came home with the stories, with what they have learned. They became really open and interested. So the mothers served as agents of openness, bringing new things to the dinner table, and that enhanced their own standing, their status in the family, and the curiosity of the fathers. So when we worked in Kashmir, in India-administered Kashmir, we realized that at some point that brothers-in-law came to our teachers, our local teachers, and said, we read the manual, we read the curriculum, we are so interested, we really would like to be part of this. So it was not us who had to persuade them. That was really interesting. And now we are at the point where we have created, together with the local partners, father schools, Parenting for Peace schools, which are currently running in a couple of countries already.
Okay. Dr. Schlaffer, is the work of policies and government supporting women's leadership in countering terrorism and violent extremism and building women's capacity to lead change in their communities, is it enough to challenge the stigma of their role?
I think policy is very important. We need to have a whole of community approach. And when we look at security, usually the security pyramid is on top. You have politicians, you have law enforcement, you have hardcore approaches, but we have to turn around this pyramid, and we have to enhance and advocate for the role of civil society, those who are in the closest proximity, who are with those who are affected by the ideologies, by the threat, by the lure of extremism on a daily basis. So I think we need the connectivity with grassroots and policy making, and the best advocates and the best ambassadors are the people on the ground. I think this is incredibly important. So I do think that the policymakers, the politicians, don't have better allies than community leaders, mothers who encounter the races, and to kind of acknowledge them as potential security allies, creating a new security pyramid, a new platform. This would be absolutely valuable. And I do think that the development goes into this direction. I remember very well when we started our organization, that was around 9/11. And as you know, and we all know, 9/11 has changed all of our lives. And all of a sudden, security had a very different meaning. It was not so much connected with safety anymore. It had this aura of threat. And unfortunately, it was very driven by hard power approaches, and women, the voices of women, the voices of civil society did not really resonate in this space. It took quite a long time, and only creating these networks, and we started out creating networks. We created networks with those who were affected by violent extremism, victims of bomb attacks, mothers of perpetrators. We created dialogues. We talked to, for example, the mother of one of the perpetrators of 9/11. She was willing to reach out, and that was really very brave, to one of the mothers of the victims. And these are dialogues which are they have this change-making potential. So I do think that starting with those who are affected, starting with those who fear that something might happen to their children, who have suspicions, this is the right way forward. Here we can start with prevention. Here we can start where the house is not on fire yet, where we really are not there in the aftermath of the tragedy, where we actually can work with the stakeholders who are at the front lines.
One last question, Dr. Schlaffer. You have been following the unprecedented events in Lebanon, the blast, the economic crisis, COVID-19, and the lockdown, which resulted in the increase of domestic violence. How important is empowering women today more than ever in a country that has been suffering for years and years. And what is your message today to all Lebanese vulnerable and weak women in Lebanon?
When I look at the situation in Lebanon, I'm really humbled. I mean, how much can a nation, how much can people take? I mean, this is extremism, violence, corruption, the pandemic, the explosion. I mean, this is like, I don't know, it is actually too much for one generation. And I do think that one can only, we can only support the women, the people. This is about the whole of society, the families, by telling them that we have empathy, that we're thinking of you, that this is nothing that goes just, by us. All the visuals we've seen are heartbreaking, and we should really remember and also reach out. And my experience is that in these tragic situations, the only thing that really helps is to stand together. The strength comes from inside. Probably you have given up on hope, that the world will save you. I think the strength comes from within the society, within the people. And as far as I know, Lebanon and the Lebanese people I have met and what I read, there is a resilience, and this is already an overused word, but there is a strength, and there is, a greatness of the hearts and there are, such strong emotions holding the fabric of society together beyond all challenges. And I understand, that young people want to leave. I read a lot about it, that many people tend to give up on their society. But I would say, building up, rebuilding the pieces is worth it. It is such a wonderful space, and the world looked at Lebanon as a place of enlightenment, a place of beauty. And it will take a lot to recover it, but I do think the Lebanese people will make it, and it's worth it. It's worth the effort.
Yeah. Dr. Schlaffer, I salute you and all your colleagues at Women Without Borders, and I thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.